The lantern's flame quivered like a heartbeat, its glow trembling against the damp stone walls. Elira Vance held it high, her knuckles white around the handle. The old mine breathed around her, air thick with dust and the faint metallic scent of forgotten ore. Every step she took echoed too loud, as though the earth itself remembered what had been buried here. She shouldn't have come alone. She knew that, but the letter tucked in her coat pocket left her no choice. The letter spoke of a truth long hidden, a secret her father had taken to his grave, and it said the only way to uncover it was to return to this mine, a place Elira had sworn she'd never see again. As the lantern revealed carvings on the wall, names scratched by hands desperate for hope, she felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. For a brief moment, she thought she heard her father's voice, a whisper carried by stone and silence. "Don't stop." She froze, straining to hear, her breath clouding the air. But the mine remained still. Or was it? Her boots crunched against the gravel, each step pulling her deeper into shadows. The deeper she went, the stronger the feeling grew that the darkness wasn't empty. Something waited, something patient. She tried to steady her breathing, telling herself it was only memory pressing in, only fear painting faces into the dark. But the flame betrayed her. It sputtered and hissed, bending toward the wall as if drawn by an unseen draft. Then she saw it, a glint quick and sharp like eyes catching the light. She lifted the lantern higher, but nothing was there, only a jagged vein of quartz reflecting her glow. Her pulse hammered. She shook her head, whispering, "It's nothing." But even the walls seemed to disagree, their silence too heavy, too knowing. Still, she pressed on. She had to. The path narrowed, forcing her to duck beneath low beams that would long rotted and slick. Her shoulder brushed the wall, and the dust stirred up smelled of old smoke, as though fires once burned here. She remembered the stories Maeve Hollis had told her, the widow who lived in the shanty by the river. Stories of miners who vanished, of treasure cursed by greed. Elira had laughed then, brushing them aside as the ramblings of a lonely woman. Now, in this suffocating dark, Maeve's words returned like a warning. The lantern shook in her hand, casting wild shadows that stretched and shrank with each step. In those shifting shapes, she thought she saw movement, a figure behind her too quick to catch. She spun, a lantern blazing in the darkness, but again found only stone. Her breath quickened. The silence was no longer still. It was listening, and somewhere behind her, the echo of a footstep did not belong to her. The hairs at the back of her neck stood on end. Elira clutched the lantern closer, its flame her only fragile shield. She tried to convince herself it was just the mine creaking, just rocks settling. But the rhythm of that sound, deliberate, steady, was wrong. Someone else was down here. She turned a corner, her heart pounding, and the lantern revealed a cavern wider than she expected. The walls glittered faintly with flecks of gold, as though mocking her with promises of riches long stripped away. She wanted to marvel, to imagine what this place must have been like when her father worked here. But the sound came again, closer this time. Her fingers brushed the letter in her pocket. She hadn't told anyone about it. No one should have known she was here. Yet the shadows moved differently now, stretching as though shaped by something more than her flame. And as she lifted the lantern higher, just for a moment, she saw him, a figure standing in the darkness, still as stone, watching. Her breath caught, but when she blinked, the shape had vanished. Had she imagined it? Or was someone truly there? She wanted to call out, to demand answers, but fear sealed her throat. She could only clutch the lantern tighter, its glow fragile against the vast dark. The silence deepened, pressing on her chest until it was almost suffocating. She felt the weight of the mine's history. Men who had died chasing gold, blood spilled for greed, secrets left unspoken. And now, she realized she wasn't alone in carrying that weight. The lantern flickered again, and the shadow at the far edge of the cavern shifted. Slowly, deliberately. Someone was here. Someone was waiting. The cavern hummed with silence, thick and alive, as though the mine itself held its breath. Elira steadied her lantern, her fingers trembling. She wanted to believe she had imagined the figure, just her fear playing tricks in the shifting glow. But the air told her otherwise. It carried something heavier than dust, something watchful. She stepped further in, her boots stirring echoes that seemed too eager to return. Each sound she made came back distorted, layered, as if other voices whispered alongside her own footsteps. She tried to swallow the fear rising in her chest, reminding herself why she came. The letter, her father, the truth buried in these walls. Yet the longer she stayed, the more it felt like the mind wanted her gone. And then, faint but clear, she heard it, a laugh. Low, broken, almost swallowed by the dark. Her breath hitched. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice cracking. The lantern's flame leapt, casting frantic shadows. The laugh faded into silence, as though it had never existed. Only the distant drip of water remained, steady and cruel. Her father's face flashed in her mind, not as she remembered him in life, but as she had seen him in the coffin, still, silent, eyes closed to secrets he never told. She had hated him for the debts, for the shame he left her mother to carry. But when the letter arrived, and signed, claiming his death had been no accident, that he had been silenced for what he knew about the mine, hate had turned to a burning need. And now, standing in the same tunnels he had once walked, she wondered if those whispers in the dark were not echoes of her own fear, but fragments of what he had heard too. The walls glittered faintly, veins of gold catching the lantern's light like mocking smiles. Men were killed for these veins. She remembered Maeve Hollis's words again. Gold doesn't just bring fortune, child. It brings hunger, and hunger makes monsters of men. As Elira traced the wall with her free hand, her fingers brushed something sharp, a carving. She raised the lantern higher and saw names etched deep into the stone. Miners long gone, each desperate to mark their claim. But beneath the names, scratched hastily, almost hidden, was a message. Beware, Creel. Her stomach dropped. Jonas Creel, the outlaw Maeve had spoken of, the man who ruled the mine before the law ever touched this town. His name was supposed to be buried with him. Yet here it was, clawed into the stone like a warning from the grave. The lantern flickered, and for a heartbeat, she swore she saw another word scrawled beneath it, betrayal, before the shadows swallowed a whole. She backed away from the wall, the lantern trembling. The weight of the mine grew heavier with each breath, pressing her closer to panic. But she forced herself to keep moving. She had to know what her father had discovered, why someone had wanted him silenced. The tunnel stretched into darkness, its ceiling dripping with water that fell like a steady clock. Each drop marked time, each step carrying her closer to answers or danger. And always behind her, the faint echo of footsteps she did not make. Her lantern's glow brushed against a collapsed support beam, blackened by fire. She crouched, running her hand across the charred wood. This wasn't age. This was destruction. Someone had set fire here long ago, trying to seal something in or out. Before she could think further, a voice rolled from the shadows, deep and steady. "You shouldn't be here, girl." Elira froze, every muscle tensed. The voice wasn't imagined. It wasn't a ghost. It was real, alive. She spun, holding the lantern high, and there he was. The figure stepped forward, the light catching his face for the first time. Hard lines, eyes sharp as blades, a presence that filled the cavern with quiet menace. He wore dust-like armor, a revolver at his hip, and in the glow of her lantern, he looked carved from the same stone that surrounded them. Her heart raced. She didn't know his name yet, but she didn't need to. His gaze said enough, cold, assessing, like a hunter watching prey decide whether to flee or fight. Dorian Cade had found her. The lantern's glow fell across him, and for the first time, Elira saw the man who had haunted the edges of her vision. Dorian Cade. The name wasn't spoken, but she felt it, the way one feels the weight of a storm before the first drop falls. His stance was deliberate, shoulders squared, boots planted like roots in the stone, and his eyes, sharp, unblinking, sliced through the shadows as if they could strip away every secret she carried. Elira tightened her grip on the lantern, holding it higher as though light could shield her. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice thinner than she intended. Cade tilted his head, the faintest trace of a smirk tugging at his mouth. "The better question is, who are you, and why are you walking through a graveyard with a flame in your hand?" Her throat tightened. This isn't a graveyard. But he stepped closer, and the way his voice echoed through the cavern made her doubt her own words. The revolver at his hip gleamed faintly as he adjusted his coat. He didn't reach for it. Not yet. He didn't need to. His presence alone was enough to press against her chest, heavy as the mine's air. "I know every soul that dares crawl through these tunnels," he said, his voice low and even. "You're not one of them. And that means you're either a fool or a thief." The accusation cut deep. Elira wanted to protest, to throw the letter in his face, to explain that she wasn't here for gold. But some instinct held her back. This man wasn't one to trust with the truth. Not yet. Instead, she steadied her voice. "I came for answers." The smirk vanished. His eyes sharpened, narrowing as though her words struck closer to something he'd rather keep buried. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the soft crackle of the lantern. For a moment, Elira wondered if he would draw his weapon. Instead, he let out a low breath and stepped nearer, close enough now that she could see the scar running across his jaw, the hardened lines carved by years of chasing men into shadows. "Answers," he repeated. "Dangerous thing to look for down here. People who dig too deep," his eyes lingered on her, "don't always come back." Her chest tightened, but she forced herself not to look away. "Then maybe you can tell me why my father never came back." The words slipped out before she could stop them, and in the silence that followed, Cade's expression shifted, just slightly, but enough. He knew something. His gaze flicked to her pocket, where the letter lay hidden. Elira noticed, clutching her coat tighter. He hadn't asked to see it, but the weight of his stare made her feel exposed, as though the paper burned with more than words. "Silas Vance's girl," Cade muttered under his breath, as though naming her piece together a puzzle he'd half forgotten. He looked at her differently now, not with suspicion, but with a recognition she didn't understand. "You knew him," she said, her voice breaking through the thick air. Cade's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he said nothing. Finally, his words came slow, deliberately. "I knew of him, and I know this. He wasn't the kind of man to stumble into death by chance. If he died in these tunnels, it was because someone wanted him gone." Her heart thundered. The letter had been right. But before she could press him for more, Cade's eyes darted past her, into the darkness of the tunnel she had just walked through. His hand lowered to his revolver. "Quiet," he hissed. Elira froze, listening. At first, all she heard was the drip of water, the beat of her own pulse. Then, faint, deliberate, the sound of footsteps. Not hers, not his. Someone else was moving in the dark. Cade's face hardened, his voice barely a whisper. "You weren't followed, were you?" Elira shook her head, but her mind raced. She had come alone, or at least she thought she had. The letter had promised secrecy, telling her to come unseen. But now, in the trembling silence of the mine, she wasn't so sure. The lantern flame quivered, shadows stretching along the cavern wall like reaching hands. Cade stepped closer to her, his presence no longer a threat but a shield, his revolver loose in his grip. "Stay behind me," he said. And from the darkness beyond the light, a whisper rose, low, taunting, unmistakably human. "You shouldn't have come back, Vance." The voice slithered through the cavern, cold and certain, wrapping itself around Elira's name like a noose. Her lantern shook in her hand, the flame jittering against the stone walls, painting shadows that moved like restless spirits. Cade stepped forward, revolver raised, his body a wall between her and the darkness. The sound of boots grinding against gravel echoed closer, steady, deliberate. Whoever it was, they wanted her to hear them coming. Elira's heart hammered as the words replayed in her skull. "You shouldn't have come back, Vance." They knew her name. They knew her bloodline. And that meant they knew her father, too. "Cade," she whispered, her voice barely holding. "Who is that?" but his jaw was clenched, his eyes fixed on the shadows. Ghosts don't talk like that, which means it's worse. From the darkness stepped a man, gaunt, with eyes that burned like coals beneath a battered hat. His face bore the harsh lines of a life spent in hunger and hatred, his hands wrapped around a rusted shotgun that looked as though it had been pulled straight from the earth itself. Elira's lantern light caught the curve of his mouth, a grin that was all cruelty. "Silas's little girl," he rasped. "Didn't think I'd see the day." Elira's breath caught. She didn't recognize him, but the weight of his words pressed against her ribs. Her father's sins, his unfinished battles, stood before her in flesh and blood. Cade's revolver clicked as the hammer drew back. "Jonas Creel," he said flatly. The name struck her like a blow. Creel, the outlaw everyone swore had died years ago. But here he was, grinning in the lantern light, alive and hungry for more than gold. Elira's knees threatened to give out. Maeve's warning echoed in her memory. Gold makes monsters, and some monsters never stay buried. Creel stepped closer, his shotgun loose but menacing. "Your daddy tried to cheat me," he growled. "Thought he could take what was mine and bury the rest. But the mine remembers, girl, and so do I." Her throat tightened. "My father never stole from anyone." His laugh cracked the silence, sharp and bitter. "That's what he told you? Oh, child, the lies they feed their kin." Silas wasn't no saint. He cut deals in the dark, same as every other man who walked down here. The difference is he crossed me, and that was his last mistake. Elira felt the weight of the letter again, burning in her pocket. She had come here for truth, but every word Creel spat twisted her father's memory further into shadow. Cade's voice cut through the thick air, steady as iron. "If you got a quarrel, Creel, it ain't with her. Let her walk." Creel's grin widened, jagged teeth catching the light. "Always playing the merciful hunter, aren't you, Cade? But mercy doesn't buy you gold. And this girl," he pointed the shotgun toward Elira, "she's the key to what her daddy hid. I can smell it on her." Elira's pulse spiked. Did he know about the letter? About the map her father might have left behind? She wanted to deny it, to tell him there was nothing, but the fire in his eyes told her lies wouldn't save her. The cavern seemed to shrink around them, walls pressing close, the air heavy with secrets clawing their way free. Creel lowered his voice, almost a hiss. "Your father found something in these tunnels. Not just gold, something more. He thought he could hide it from me. But now," his gaze slid to her lantern. "Now you'll light the way." Cade shifted, his revolver aimed steady, but Elira saw the calculation in his eyes. He couldn't take the shot, not without risking her. The silence that followed was electric, like a storm waiting to split the sky. Elira's heart pounded so loud she thought the walls would echo it. Her father's ghost seemed to whisper in her ear, urging her to run, urging her to stand, urging her to see what he had died for. But before she could move, Creel stepped forward, his shotgun raised higher. "Show me where it is, girl, or I'll finish what I started with your father." And the lantern's flame sputtered, plunging them into a trembling half-dark. The lantern gasped for life, its flames sputtering as if it, too, felt the weight of Creel's threat. Elira clutched it close, her heartbeat rattling louder than the dripping water in the tunnels. The shotgun's barrel glinted in the weak light, and Creel's grin stretched wider, hungry for fear. But Cade moved first. His revolver barked once, the crack shattering the cavern's silence. The bullet struck stone near Creel's boots, a warning shot that kicked up dust and sparks. "Back off," Cade growled, his voice like thunder rolling low and dangerous. Creel only laughed, a sound that scraped against the walls like jagged metal. "You always were too soft, Cade. You aim to scare while I aim to kill." He leveled the shotgun. "Run," Cade hissed to Elira, and before she could protest, the cavern erupted. The shotgun roared, the blast tearing splinters from the wooden beams overhead. Elira ducked, her lantern swinging wildly, throwing chaotic light that painted the walls with frantic shapes. Cade shoved her forward, forcing her into the narrow tunnel. "Move," he barked. Her legs obeyed before her mind could. She stumbled into the darkness, the lantern jerking in her hand. Behind her, Boots thundered, and gunfire cracked again, each sound a jolt that threatened to swallow her whole. The tunnels twisted like a maze, each corner tight and suffocating. Elira's lungs burned as she ran, dust clawing at her throat. The lantern's glow spilled across carvings, splintered beams, rusted tools long abandoned. Ghosts of men who had chased fortune here seemed to chase her now. And behind it all, Creel's voice carried through the dark. "You can't hide, girl. Your daddy tried, and look where he lies." Elira's chest tightened. Her father's death was no longer a mystery whispered in taverns. It was a sentence delivered by the man who now hunted her. And yet, through the terror, a fire sparked inside her. If he thought she would die in the same shadows, he was wrong. Cade caught up to her, his face streaked with sweat and grit, revolver still clenched in his hand. "Keep left," he snapped. She obeyed, veering into a tunnel that sloped downward, the air growing colder, wetter. The ground slicked beneath her boots, forcing her to grab the wall for balance. The lantern threw its glow onto a wooden door, rotted and half buried in rubble. Cade yanked at it, forcing it open with a grunt. And he ordered. Elira hesitated, staring into the black beyond. But the echo of Creel's pursuit left no choice. She slipped inside, Cade slamming the door shut behind them. The darkness was near absolute. Only the faint, trembling light of her lantern cut through. Elira gasped for breath, her chest heaving as silence pressed heavy around them. Cade leaned against the wall, listening, his revolver trained on the door. Creel's footsteps slowed outside, deliberate, taunting. The man was hunting with patience, not fury. He knew these tunnels were like veins in his own hand. Elira's hand brushed the letter in her pocket again, her father's secret burning hotter. Now than ever, she whispered, more to herself than Cade. "He knew Creel would come for me. That's why he left the map." Cade's eyes flicked to her. "Map." Her lips parted, the weight of confession heavy. But before she could speak, the door rattled. Creel's voice seeped through the cracks, low and venomous. "You think you're safe behind wood and stone? This mine belongs to me, and every path leads to me." The wood groaned under a violent shove, dust raining from the ceiling. Elira stumbled back, clutching the lantern tighter. Cade raised his revolver, eyes hard as steel. For a heartbeat, time froze, the flame flickering between survival and ruin. Elira felt the mine's history press against her. Her father's betrayal, Creel's greed, the weight of men who had bled for veins of gold. And now, she was bound to it, a living thread in a tapestry woven with shadows. Cade's jaw set. "When that door breaks," he muttered, "we run. Don't stop. Don't look back." Elira nodded, though her heart screamed with doubt. The door shuddered again, the wood splintering. Creel's laugh seeped through, cruel and certain. And as the lantern flame steadied for one defiant breath, the door exploded inward. The door burst inward, shards of wood scattering like shrapnel. Elira stumbled back, her lantern swaying wildly, painting chaos across the stone. Creel's figure filled the gap, shotgun raised, his grin twisted with triumph. Dust swirled around him, the mine itself seeming to recoil at his presence. "End of the line," he rasped, stepping into the chamber. His eyes gleamed in the lantern's light. "Just like your daddy." Elira's chest tightened, fear and fury colliding inside her. She saw her father's coffin again, the unanswered questions, the letter that had dragged her here. All of it led to this moment, the truth staring her down the barrel of Creel's gun. Cade moved like a shadow, breaking free of stone. His revolver cracked, sparks splitting the dark. The bullet grazed Creel's arm, forcing him to snarl, but not fall. The shotgun roared in answer, thunder echoing through the chamber. Splinters of rock rained from the ceiling. "Run, girl," Cade barked, but Elira didn't move. Something inside her snapped. The same fire that had pushed her into this mine now burned hotter, steadier. She wouldn't run. Not anymore. Her lantern's flame trembled, its glow brushing across the wall. And there, half hidden beneath layers of grime, she saw it. A carving. Not like the others she'd passed before, but deliberate, almost a map etched deep into stone. Her breath caught. Her father had left her a path. "Over there," she shouted, pointing. Cade's eyes flicked to it, then back to Creel. The outlaw's grin faltered when he realized her discovery. Rage replaced it, burning hotter than gunpowder. "No!" Creel roared, charging forward. Elira darted to the wall, lantern in hand, tracing the carving with her fingers. Her father's mark. The symbol Maeve Hollis had once shown her on a faded scrap of paper. The map wasn't treasure, it was the truth. A record of what Silas Vance had uncovered, proof that Creel had betrayed and murdered to keep his hold on the mine. The chamber trembled with another gunshot. Cade and Creel clashed in a deadly dance of light and shadow, bullets sparking against stone. Elira pressed the lantern closer to the carving, its glow illuminating words she could barely read. But she didn't need to. She knew what it meant. Her father hadn't died a thief. He had died protecting something worth more than gold. Proof of Creel's crimes. "Girl!" Creel's voice snapped her back. He had shoved Cade to the ground, shotgun leveled at her. His arm bled, but his fury was unbroken. "Step away from that wall, or I'll scatter you across it." Elira's hands shook, but she didn't step back. For the first time, she held Creel's gaze, her fear tempered by fire. "You killed him," she said, her voice steady, "and you'll never bury his truth." Again, she lifted the lantern high, its flame blazing against the damp air. Creel sneered, finger tightening on the trigger. Then Cade struck, launching upward, tackling the outlaw with a roar. The shotgun fired, its blast ripping into the ceiling. The chamber shuddered violently, stone groaning as dust and rocks began to rain. "Elira, go!" Cade shouted, wrestling with Creel. But she didn't leave. She couldn't. The chamber was collapsing, shadows writhing with every falling stone. She rushed forward, lantern in hand, and swung it with all her strength. The glass shattered against Creel's head, fire bursting outward in a spray of sparks. The outlaw screamed, blinded by flame and fury. Cade seized the moment, slamming Creel against the wall. The shotgun clattered to the ground, swallowed by rubble. The mine roared around them, its heart giving way. Rocks tumbled, beams cracked. Elira's chest heaved, lungs choking on dust. She grabbed Cade's arm, pulling him toward the tunnel. Creel's screams echoed behind them, fading beneath the thunder of collapsing stone. They stumbled through the choking dark, half dragging, half running, until at last, blessed air, they burst out of the mine's mouth, the night sky sprawling above them, stars burning bright against the void. Elira collapsed to her knees, coughing, tears streaking her dust-stained face. Cade dropped beside her, chest heaving. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence outside was different, clean, alive, not the suffocating weight of stone. Finally, Elira pulled the fragment of the carving from her memory, clutching it like a torch in her mind. Her father's truth had survived, and so had she. Cade's voice broke the quiet, rough but steady. "Your father wasn't the man Creel claimed. He died fighting to protect something bigger than gold. You know that now." Elira nodded, her lantern gone, but its fire still burning inside her. "And I'll make sure no one forgets it." The wind stirred the trees, carrying away the dust, carrying away the shadows. And so, in the dark mouth of a dead mine, where gold once promised fortune and greed promised ruin, Elira Vance lit a flame that could never be snuffed out. Not by fear, not by betrayal, not by shadows. Her father's secret had found its voice, and it burned brighter than any lantern.